or manage your personal finances? Your search stops right here. Join Mukonki Mukonkela from Inside Partners Africa every Tuesdays at 0720 hours.
And where are the offices?
Dalama Insights Business Show, a program that gives you the best and most practical, actionable insights. The Radio 4 of the Zama National Broadcasting Corporation. Good morning and welcome to Ndalama Insights. This is your trusted radio program where we break down the world of personal finance to help you make smarter money decisions. I'm Leslie Singayanwe, and today we're focusing on a topic that's on everyone's mind as we enter the festive season, and that is basically how to prepare financially for the holidays. By the way, these holidays, our children are going to be home for 6-7 weeks, so it is going to be a very, very, very long holiday. Joining me on the show is Mukonki Mukonkela from Inside Partners Africa, our financial expert and regular guest on the show. Mukonki, welcome.
Good morning, Leslie. Good morning, listeners. How have you been?
I'm well, thank you. And how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Great. We are entering. It's a very critical period. You know this period. If you don't take it the right way, it can challenge you for the rest of the year.
It does. It gets you on a wrong footing
for the whole year.
For the whole year,
end up playing catch up half of the year because it's quite hectic. But let's begin by unpacking why the festive season tends to be financially challenging for so many people. What makes this time of the year so tricky?
So it's a very exciting period, as you've said, Leslie, because during this period we actually see increased incomes. If you didn't know, so your salaries, you are getting your 13th check, right? Some people are getting 13th checks. That's increased incomes. Others are getting performance bonuses. So the income side is experiencing a bulge in terms of money coming in, but also we see this aggressive advertising from those that want you to spend money at their shops. So we see retailers and advertisers amplifying their promotions. Just last week, we saw Black Friday, where everybody was trying to get something at a reduced price or on sale. So these aggressive marketing strategies really make you behave as though you're in a hurry to buy things because you're going to lose out. So that's one aspect that makes this holiday seasons very, very hard to deal with in terms of finances. There's also increased expectations, particularly from our relatives, our children, our parents. This is the time when we are merry, we want to give out gifts, and so everybody's expecting something from you, but sometimes they might be expecting something that is much more expensive than you had planned. But the third point, which is actually very critical and which many of us get to miss, is lack of planning. We don't actually get to think about whether we can sit down and plan our finances so that we are able to navigate through these festive seasons and land in January well equipped to ensure that we manage the January dry season and really just carry the month through. So lack of planning is also lacking many times, and that's why many of us find ourselves stressing when it comes to managing our bills in January. Yeah.
Now looking at the concept of overspending, why do people tend to go overboard with their holiday spending?
So there are a lot of reasons why people go overboard in during the festive seasons, but one of them really is impulse buying. And this is as a result of the aggressive marketing that we see from advertisers during the festive season. So even if you didn't intend to buy something, a TV, I don't know what sizes of TVs there are. I've got a very humble TV in my house. So you want to enlarge your TV because the one you have is not big enough. And because of aggressive marketing from advertisers, you end up spending your money without even thinking about it. And also the other aspect is really just seeing what your friends are doing, more like competing with others. So because other people are spending money at this shop during Black Friday, you also feel like you need to go there and see what's happening, and you end up also impulse buying as a result. And the other one is emotional decision making. So other people consider this period as a time to show love, particularly if you are not present, let's say with your children during the course of the year. So you take this time as a period to show love to your children, to your family, and that results in you spending more money than you had actually planned to spend. So those are a few reasons.
But how can we
Mm.
identify, when we're falling into these traps? Because it seems like it's just normal holiday cheer.
That's true. So it goes with the way you actually financial planning. First of all, financial awareness, right? So you need to be aware of what triggers your emotional spending or unplanned expenditure. So for this period, we know it's a festive season, so a lot of people are excited. They want to spend money for their relatives, for their children. So that's already a trigger. But then has it been planned for? Did you plan for this expenditure? So you need to be aware of what is triggering your expenditure during this period. It's very, very important that you're aware of your financial triggers.
Mhm, mhm.
Mm,
Which gets us to our next question now. How do
mm.
we break this cycle of overspending during the holidays?
So for us to break this cycle, first of all, we need to create what is called a financial budget, a holiday budget, by the way. And this holiday budget should encompass both angles of your income and your expenditure. So what are you expecting in terms of your the money that you're going to make in December? So by month end of December, your performance bonuses, your 13th check, and whatever else, your salary, how much are you going to make? And then plan your expenditure. So how should you spend this income that you're going to earn? So plan your expenditure, your gifts. Don't forget the gifts. Don't forget the family visits for those that want to take vacations. Don't forget those vacations as well. Plan them in and also focus on what matters the most. Sometimes we tend to buy expensive gifts, but what actually matters the most is having meaningful experiences with our family and friends. And so that is what you need to focus on. And I would also encourage people to actually focus on setting aside money for savings and for investments later in the year. So don't just spend the money to be merry, but also set aside some money to start saving and to start investing later on in the year.
Mhm, mhm.
Mm.
Another idea of focusing on meaningful experiences makes sense. But let's look ahead to January. For many people, the joy of the holidays quickly turns into regret, when they're faced with bills and debt.
Hmm.
I mean, next year, children will be opening schools on the 13th, which is mid-month. Can you imagine? How
Mm.
can you avoid starting the new year in a financial hole? Because looking at the way things are going, it'll be very easy to fall into that trap.
It's very easy to fall into the trap if you have not planned for January.
Mhm,
So December is the best time to plan for January. You don't plan for January in January. And so I've already mentioned the budget, the holiday budget that you need to create. So look at your income and your expenses. But as you create this budget, you need to ensure that you've the money that you have is sufficient to take you all the way to January. Because what tends to happen is you tend to spend more in December and forget about January and February. So ensure that you've got some savings for January and February. So don't spend everything in December. And also, you can also prioritize expenditures in January and February. Make some prepayments, pay ahead of time. For example, if you pay rent and school fees and you need to buy uniforms, you can buy those things ahead of time. You don't have to wait until January to buy those things. That way, if you're able to buy them in advance, you can secure that money. And when January comes, you'll be less stressful. So that is very, very important. Ensure that you set aside money for January and February, but most importantly, ensure that you also can make some prepayments. I know for some people, they feel like, why should I be paying my rentals in advance? I'll wait until the month comes. But it's actually going to reduce on your stress when January comes, and you focus better. You think clearer in terms of how to earn much more income in January, even while others are struggling. And the second point really is to avoid borrowing for the holidays. Just last week, I was hearing some promotion of You can you can borrow and spend for the holidays. So some financial institution was advertising like that. I mean, why should you borrow to go spend? You only borrow money that you're going to make a return on, that you're going to invest, so that it gives you a return, so that you're able to repay back. So I really admonish people not to borrow for spending for the holiday season, because it's going to create a trap for you, and it's going to make it harder for you when it comes to January. Rather than focusing on ensuring you're taking care of your family needs, you're going to be stressed with this dead burden. Right now, it's exciting. You get the loan, spend it on whatever. But when January comes, you'll be expected to repay back that loan. And so don't borrow for holiday expenditure. Live within your means, particularly during this period. Live within your means, and don't be enticed by aggressive advertisers. They always are there during the holidays, and we expect this, Leslie, don't we? We always see this during the holidays. So why should people all of a sudden be surprised that this company is now advertising so aggressively for me to buy this TV that I don't even need?
Yes, and all of a sudden you feel like it would be a bargain, and yet you actually are spending more.
And that's where the trap is. You feel like it's a bargain, but many times it's actually not even a bargain. It's actually it could even be the actual price.
Very interesting. But how should someone then deal with family members or friends who expect expensive gifts when they're on a tight budget? Because we've got this whole you have this one event you do once a year where you buy cousins, nephews, nieces presents. It's a once a year event. But so how do you handle it then?
um, I think communication is very key. We many times we shy away from telling our families and or relatives and friends the truth, particularly when it comes to our financial circumstances. So you need to be very clear with them. Tell them what you can afford and what you cannot, particularly if they're expecting something from you around this period of time. And rather than work with their expectation, you work with what you have. So you can buy gifts that you can afford, that are within your budget. That's why it's very important to start with a budget. So because you've already reviewed your finances, you know what you're able to afford. So buy them gifts that you're able to afford for them. But most importantly, communicate how precious they are to you, by the way, and that gifts are just part of the deal, but it's not the whole thing. Like I said, meaningful experiences are much more important. Spending time with them is much more important than how expensive the gift they're receiving is. So I think communication is very key when you're dealing with relatives that are expecting too much from you.
And there's always the temptation, especially when you've got savings, to dip into their savings for holiday expenses. What's your advice for someone who feels tempted to do this?
So that's a no-go area. I mean, you should not tamper with your savings. Leslie, savings are meant for what? I'm now interviewing you.
There are two things: it's a rainy day or raising enough money to invest.
Yeah, exactly. Savings are meant to set aside money for reinvestment later on. They are not meant for dipping into whenever you want. However, if you're really under pressure, what you could perhaps do is cut off some expenditure lines. So some expenses on your budget, cut them off, and use that money that you're going to identify from your expenditure for whatever purpose that you want to use for. But it's very important that savings are not touched, because savings are for investments, as we've discussed throughout the course of this year.
Yeah, cutting off luxuries, huh?
Not luxuries. Well, you could say luxuries.
Get rid of
Like
that.
what? Like that whiskey, right?
That's not a luxury, that's a necessity. But anyway, but is it possible though? When after this discussion, I'm even thinking to myself, like, is it possible to actually have a fulfilling, holiday season on a tight budget?
It is. I mean, I have had fulfilling holiday seasons with no, because when people talk about budget, they talk about money.
Yes.
How about fulfilling holiday seasons with very little money? Let's hear from Stephen Banda. Stephen Banda is saying planning for January starts as early as the last January by saving throughout the year. As long as you know your responsibilities, January should not be a burden. Discipline is very cardinal. I think he's answered this question. Is it possible to have a fulfilling holiday season? It is, as long as you know your responsibilities. January should not be a burden. Discipline is very cardinal. And I agree with you, Mr. Stephen Banda. Um, Tight budget, I go back to meaningful experiences. Holiday should not just be about what I'm going to buy for you, what you're going to buy for me, Leslie. Why don't we just hang out, go and have a coffee? Coffee is just like 20 kwacha. Let's just hang out somewhere. Let's drink some coffee, or whiskey if you like. Oh, whiskey is expensive. I don't even know how much it is.
Yeah, drinking is an expensive
Sorry, I
habit
don't
in
know how much it
Nigeria.
is. I've never drunk
Yeah,
whiskey.
it's a very expensive habit. Not, if you don't do it, don't start it. It's quite expensive,
So
especially if you start it late in life.
oh,
It's very
really?
expensive.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll just stick with coffee. Those of us that don't know it. So we'll stick with coffee. So let's hang around and have some coffee. I think meaningful experiences are much more important than how expensive a gift is that you need to buy for me. And for people that really love you, they are going to understand. Unless I don't know, unless I don't know what kind of families and relatives you have.
All right. Now, as we wrap up, though, what would you like to leave our listeners with, as they prepare for the holidays?
I would encourage all of us to just spend a minute to think through our finances before we enter any shop. I know it's not something that's natural to us human beings, but for the first time in 2024, let's just hold back, look at how much money we're going to make, plan it. This is how I'm going to spend it, and let's stick with our plan. It's a very simple plan that I'm telling you, right? And then come January, you're going to be less stressful. While everybody else is complaining, January, boy, January, you'll be better off. So that's my encouragement. Just spend a minute to plan for next year. For next year.
That's basically all it takes, planning. I think
Yeah.
that's the key. That's the key outtake from today's interview. It's the idea that you plan for these things. But Mukonki, thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you, Leslie.
Great. Well, as always, we've had Mukonki Mukonkela with us in the studio. Remember, the festive season doesn't have to mean financial strain, and with a little planning and discipline, you can enjoy the holidays while staying on track with your financial goals. Good morning. You have been listening to Dalama Insights Business Show, brought to you